How's it going, guys, and welcome back to BL3's Forgotten, the series where I take a look at underused and not often talked about pieces of gear to determine whether or not they deserve to be remembered within the modern meta of the game or should be left behind and forgotten. And today we're taking a look at the Unseen Threat. If you'd like to farm the Unseen Threat for yourself, you're going to want to fast travel over to Cursehaven on Xylurgo, specifically taking the Lantern's Hook fast travel station. From there, head towards the right-hand side and over the bridge, along the path and into the house in the corner where you can find a mock. Kill him and he can drop you the Unseen Threat. The Unseen Threat is a legendary Jacob's assault rifle, unable to roll with any elements, and instead of the usual critical ricochet effect, on crit the Unseen Threat will spawn 3 homing projectiles at the initial target, which will arc up into the air before coming back down to either try and hit the initial target or other nearby enemies. The Unseen Threat has only received 1 direct change, having the damage of those secondary projectiles increased, but of course was also hit by the overall sniper damage buff of 20%. Those direct changes, of course, are not the only changes that have impacted the Unseen Threat greatly. As I'm sure many of you remember who were around on release, the Unseen Threat used to be an absolute menace and was widely regarded as one of the strongest sniper rifles in the game. This thing was everywhere, but it was especially omnipresent on Amara, and that of course was because of the unintended interaction between bonus elements and unlisted projectiles. When you had bonus elements present through just about any source, be it next to mags, infusion, central cryo, just anything that gave you a bonus element on top of your damage, whenever there was an instance of an unlisted projectile, so if for example, say you're using a single next to mags anointment with the Unseen Threat, it usually spawns 3 projectiles, instead it will spawn 6. And for each unique instance of a bonus element, this would stack, which of course was absolutely ridiculous, and again, this is why at the time the Unseen Threat was an absolute menace. But of course, that has since been fixed and the meta of the Unseen Threat is long gone. So where does it leave it today? Well, it's still a pretty damn good sniper rifle. And I mean, it is pretty hard to be a bad gun when you have upwards of 113,000 base damage, though to be fair with that, that is actually on the lower end of Jacob's sniper rifles, especially considering it is non-elemental and doesn't deal any sort of splash damage. Which means the best we have to compare this to is the Monocle. However, the Monocle has a multiplicative 250% crit damage. So while in general, the Unseen Threat actually does have a good base damage, comparing it to other Jacob snipers, the Unseen Threat actually has a pretty low potential. And yeah, this is something that can be felt, especially on True Guardian Takedown. It felt noticeably worse than other snipers, though again, was still okay, even if a little bit inconsistent at times. And unfortunately, this inconsistency isn't just because of how annoying it can be to hit a crit on Necrobugs and Guardians, but it's also due to those secondary projectiles sometimes going off to hit other enemies or just missing enemies entirely. Sometimes all 3 of those projectiles go up and come back down and hit your main target directly. In that case, the special effect is great and it's actually dealing pretty good damage. Other times, 1, 2, or all of them just outright miss everything and you're not even getting anything out of that bonus effect. And the middle ground is them all just going off to hit some other random fucking enemies. And individually, those secondary projectiles don't really do that much. Now here's the thing, I want to be clear, the Unseen Threat is not weak whatsoever. It was only really weak on True Guardian Takedown because other snipers that are good on Guardian Takedown are the snipers that are exceptionally good either through base stats or their special effect, which as we've been over, the base stats and special effect of the Unseen Threat are a little bit underwhelming in comparison to other options. But at lower tiers of content like True Mollywon Takedown, the threat is still a fucking beast and a majority of the time the special effect doesn't even matter, which is both good and bad. It's good because it means the gun is solid even with the special effect having the ability to be inconsistent, but bad because comparing it to the Headsplosion or Ionic Disruptor or again the Monocle, other snipers that are very straightforward, the threat is still falling pretty short. It doesn't have the base stats to keep up with the Ionic Disruptor and it doesn't have the damage formula to keep up with the Headsplosion or the Monocle. And without those things you'd expect it to have a special effect that can pull it up, but it just doesn't really have a special effect. And it is a shame because I do really like this gun and I do find it really fun. It's just really hard to justify over other options. It's even hard to justify when you're building around it specifically. Of course, having those 3 unlisted projectiles makes it very good with extra projectiles. Using this with an Infernal Wish, Two Fang playing dirty, you can duplicate those projectiles. But again, those are still inconsistent, and again, I bring up the Headsplosion. The Headsplosion ricochets out 3 projectiles, deals explosive damage, and also just has higher area coverage that actually does something. Overall, there's just really no way to spin it to where the unseen threat can do anything that another sniper can't. And I think it could have a place if it just had maybe a bit more damage, but mostly having those secondary projectiles always target the main target as long as it's still alive, and making those projectiles more consistently hit. Because as it stands right now, the unseen threat is a sniper with average base stats for a Jakob sniper, though worse overall damage formula potential, and has a unique effect that doesn't really do anything a solid 70% of the time. It is not a bad gun by any means, and I do enjoy using it, but it is hard to say that there's ever a situation where you should use it. But that's gonna about do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all of that. I'll be live right after this video goes up, right here on YouTube and also over on my Twitch channel, where there will be a link to down in the description below, and just under that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.